Good morning, everyone, and again, thank you for joining us on the program. Tunisia's Ennahda party has proclaimed victory in historic municipal elections after exit polls suggested they had won the most votes. The elections held on Sunday are Tunisia's first municipal elections since the 2011 Arab Spring, and only 1 in 3 eligible voters are reported to have cast their ballots, reflecting a low turnout in a process which is seen as a key step in a democratic transition for Tunisia.
Tunisians ignored the first municipal elections as massive apathy was recorded in the country's 4th election since the revolution. Indeed, only 1 voter out of 3 went to the polls on Sunday. For some voters, it is an abstention sanction to launch an appeal on the political class. It is a good thing that the municipal elections were held. We feel that after the revolution, something was changing. I noticed in the polling station a great abstention of young people that we did not imagine. I am happy because we feel really responsible, active, and we have the impression to have an objective for development, for the future. The turnout would undoubtedly remain a black mark on May 6. Participation was only 33.7% at the national level and only 26% in the capital, Tunis, according to the body in charge of elections. An election, according to many observers, sends a worrying signal to the political class. It was an election that was to constitute the last stage of an electoral process that began in October 2011.
And according to some observers, because of this dispersion, none of the non-partisan political lists seem to question the dominance of the Ennahda Tunis, founded in 2012 by the current president Beji Caid Espesi and the Ennahda Islamists. Nonetheless, in the balance of power between the two parties, allies of a circumstance for more than 3 years, Ennahda seems to regain upper hand after its defeat in the legislative elections in 2014. Now, the Rashid Ghannouchi movement has indeed claimed victory in Tunisia, and in total, the number of votes through the country. A polling institute, Assign, credits the Ennahda with 27% of the votes against 22% of Ennahda Tunis. The independent lists are given at 28% in cumulative scores. And now we'll talk about these estimates with our correspondent in Tunis. Good morning, Tariq Hafid. The first post-revolution municipal elections had a very low turnout, barely 33%. What do you explain about this?
We
are indeed facing a blatant lack of interest of the Tunisian population for this election. First, it's very important to point out that these elections had been postponed 3 times, twice in 2017 and once in 2018. The voters were presented with little-known candidates. There is also a form of wariness of a population with a political thing which is limited for some years to bickering between Ennahda Tunis, the party of the president, and the Islamist party Ennahda. Finally, Tunisians are concerned about facing economic and social difficulties about politics. However, there are two points that should be noted. The democratic nature of this election, which was not marred by fraud, and perfect control of security by the Tunisian officials. Now, Tariq, the young people had the least turn-up at the polls, yet they were the front-runners of the revolution. Is that a long electoral process that began in 2011 that did worry them? This is a strong message from Tunisian youth. Some polling stations did not receive any young voters on the polling day. Young people started the revolution, but now they see it as having been taken away from them by the older generation. They are the first victims of the economic crisis, and for other countries on the African continent, leaving the country is often the only thing. And now, Tariq, although the Islamist party Ennahda took the popular lead in this election, it is far from being popular. How do you explain this situation? This is a small victory for Rashid Ghannouchi's party. This team has lost its electorate. If we compare with previous elections, in fact, Ennahda focused on his opponent, Tunis, who had been torn apart by a series of internal crises. But when we read the preliminary results of this election, we see that the independent lists had achieved positive results in important municipalities. This is one of the surprises. And final question, Tariq. According to many observers, this strong abstention is a worrying signal sent to the political class. Should we expect new protests in Tunisia? New rounds of protests are to be expected, but they have nothing to do with this election and the high abstention rate. The Tunisian people's anger is due to government's inability to propose solutions to the country out of a crisis. The government obliged to apply the letter of decisions imposed by IMF and the World Bank and struggling to implement them, particularly in the face of the refusal of the trade union. Merci à vous, Tariq. Thank you very much, Tariq, for the details. Tariq Hafid is our correspondent in Tunis, the capital of Tunisia.
This is the morning call right here on African News. We have other stories making the headlines across different parts, across other parts of the continent coming up in just a moment.